I urge all your listeners to keep tuning in to Sailing Beyond Knowledge Radio.
Sailing Beyond Knowledge Radio podcast. And today is episode 64, 65. Today is episode 65. And I'm really excited to say that we have a guest today. We're introducing Dr. Nicholas Corrin, who is a doctor of Oriental medicine, published author, and a researcher based in Switzerland. And today is episode 65. And I'm really excited to say that we have a guest today. We're introducing Dr. Nicholas Corrin, who is a doctor of Oriental medicine, published author, and a researcher based in Switzerland. He works with patients around the world using a unique method of remote healing that he developed. And this approach blends radionics with Asian energy medicine, medical intuition, remote sensing, psychological counseling, and personalized botanical protocols. Following the footsteps of Paracelsus, Dr. Nicholas combines scientific inquiry with heart-centered healing, always looking beyond mainstream solutions. He is also the creator of a flowing movement system rooted in spirals, vortices, and pulsations, drawing inspiration from Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, and the work of Wilhelm Reich. He taught this practice in the US for several years beyond relocating to Switzerland. Originally from the UK, Dr. Nicholas studied French and Italian literature before pursuing postgraduate work in art history and Renaissance philosophy. The Renaissance ideal of interdisciplinary thinking is at the core of his clinical work. He later earned his doctorate in Oriental medicine through training in both the US and India, maintaining a private practice for over 2 decades in Seattle and San Juan Islands. Before transitioning to holistic medicine, Dr. Corrin taught creative writing, critical theory, history, and visual communications at various colleges. It was the AIDS epidemic that led him to change course. Through his research, he came to believe that chronic illnesses, including AIDS, CFIDs, and Gulf War syndrome, stem not just from nature, but from laboratory research, government policy, and profit-driven medical agendas. This insight led him to view illness as something deeply tied to human systems and personal lifestyle rather than random misfortune. His work today is deeply personal and highly individualized. He sees symptoms as intelligent messages from the body, cries for help, rather than mistakes to be corrected. At the heart of his approach is the belief that unresolved emotional trauma often underlies chronic physical symptoms. Unless that trauma is transformed, it simply reappears in a new form or new forms. Treating people remotely has connected him with clients from diverse cultures and backgrounds. His book, The Power of Letting Go, first published in 2013, is a self-help guide for connecting with nature, restoring mental and physical elasticity, and aligning with the natural flow of life. This same philosophy guides his clinical practice, soften to energetic blocks, restore signal flow between cells, and let physical healing follow from emotional insight and inner balance. So, hello, we have Dr. Nicholas Corrin with us today. I'm very honored to have you here, Dr. Corrin, back on Sailing Beyond Knowledge Radio with me for the first time. And I just want to say it's really exciting to have you here and I can't wait for people to learn about what you do and your work and your writing as well. So welcome, Dr. Corrin.
Oh, well, thanks. I mean, as you know, you and I have so many areas in common and so many affinities where, common interest and very much in alignment on values, etc. And your experience is so broad and rich. I'm actually extremely impressed by that and your courage in moving through so much adversity and the depth and the accuracy of your knowledge in so many different areas. So, I'm delighted to be here. Hopefully, we can zero in on some of that today.
Absolutely, yes. And then that's how I discovered you with your writing on Substack, and a lot of your articles were very aligned to some of the work I've been delving into. So yeah, we'll definitely point people to that later on today, and they can read about your writings, and you're a superb writer. Okay, so first of all, I think it's best if we kind of start off. People have heard a bit about your biography, your background, but if you want to just share with people kind of what your focus is right now, what brought you to Switzerland, what your experience was before, what you've been dealing with. And I think it would be a good idea actually if we kind of go back towards the COVID years, because I think that's quite important right now.
Yeah, I mean, it was because of the pandemic that my wife and I decided to leave the States and move to Switzerland in 2021. And so that was a game changer for so many people. And for us, I felt it was imperative to make that move, even though I'm still very much involved. I'm a US citizen, so I'm very passionate about what's going on in my country. I haven't left the States in that respect at all. But for reasons having to do with work and survival, I felt it was necessary for us to do that. And so since that time, since the beginning of the COVID eruption onto the screen, so to speak, I've worked almost exclusively in remote healing. Prior to that, I had an office. I would see people in person, and since 2020, 5 years, I've almost 100% focused on remote consults, remote healing.
So, with this experience, what was your perception of what was really going on during the COVID years for you?
Well, I mean, it didn't all dawn on me at once. I actually I did a webinar and I made a video called "Joining the Dots," and I was trying to understand what's going on with the child sex trafficking, the wars. What was my perception about, the COVID phenomenon when it began? And I have to say, for me, it's an ongoing project of understanding how all the parts fit together and it's very complex, with all the world events, the geopolitics, and how they cross-weave to manipulate perception of reality in conjunction with the nanotechnological invasion of nature and the sky. And then all of that stuff interweaves with the geopolitical machinations and the steering of emotional reactions to those machinations towards certain goals. Therefore, it's an ongoing robotization of both humans and nature. And it's not very well understood in my perspective, the degree to which, that's going on. So very complex.
Yeah, it's something we definitely need to explore further a bit later on. And I think there's a lot there that most people are unaware of, that, this is so much bigger than just what it was. And even then it was overwhelming and quite difficult to figure out what was happening. So yes, I mean, just to kind of sum it up in a nutshell, it seems to be related to the agenda of digitalizing all life on Earth. And, that's part of it, basically. Okay, so going back to kind of more about your philosophy and perception of the world, you studied Renaissance philosophy. How do you feel like that shaped your clinical worldview, particularly around healing and perception?
That's a good question, actually. And the answer is very, fundamentally it did, although at the time it never occurred to me, because at the time I had no interest in going into medicine. I had no interest in being a quote unquote healer whatsoever. And only later, when I started to pursue this work and get the kind of quote unquote magical, miraculous results working on people, did I start to review what I had been studying from Renaissance art and philosophy and music. And then I realized that the understanding of the cosmos and where I'm operating is all written and explored in the brilliant exponents of that period, which was not just a renaissance of the classical and pre-classical period, but it was also an influx of Indian ideas from the Vedas into Italy, and it was a blending of mystical Christianity, Sufism, Jewish Kabbalah, and Plato's philosophy, going beyond the rationalism of Aristotle. And most fundamentally, as you know, it's based really on the idea that there's a oneness, there's a now, so intelligence in the universe that's dependent only upon the one, which is unnameable, and then there's the soul, and that both has a soul, the world has a soul, and the mind isn't, like we think of it today, merely something like a receiver that is exposed to data input and processes that data and then reacts to data. The mind shapes and forms actual things, and that means that the thought process of an individual is not just co-creative, it can actually restructure things. So that's sort of like a precursor to phenomenological philosophy of Husserl and Heidegger, Merleau-Ponty in France, and then later quantum ideas, which today are very fashionable. But that's really old wine in new bottles, because the Neoplatonists already, and as you know, in the Vedas, that's very well understood. So basically, what I then came to realize was I probably had been unwittingly putting myself through that training, in order to have a really strong intellectual and historical and philosophical foundation for what I was discovering empirically by working in medicine. So sort of interesting. I think people have those rear view mirror, now it makes sense why that happened to me, and and then life has a certain meaning that it didn't have at the moment, because it's a certain kind of a good destiny feeling that, oh yes, this is the path you're on, and this is why certain things have been placed there for you that you're not aware of at the time, but that will lead. If you didn't do those, you'll never be able to be there where you are. now.
Exactly.
And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so let's actually get into this unique remote healing system that you've developed. If you want to explain what it is and how this process works from your side, and what you sense and how you interpret that information.
Yeah. So information, as you know, is the word that replaced energy in scientific circles. And information medicine is a term to describe a lot of non-local processes in healing. But to me, it's not. The word information is very dry, and I don't really like the word information because it lacks all the color and the emotion of actual experience. But I should say that because before I entered into alternative medicine, I wanted to be a writer and an artist, and I still am. So I trained myself in the arts of writing and in the visual arts. So this ability of mine to see things at a distance has again a lot to do. For example, the patient, I can look at the patient, for example, 5,000 miles away, and I look at the patient. It's not, I see a photograph, I can look around the patient, the way you walk around the sculpture and go into the body and look at the liver or the spleen or something in the hip. My knowledge of anatomy links up with my ability to 3D view artistically and sculpturally, so kind of model that. And then the thing is that the very act of seeing that alters it, meaning starts a healing process in it, based on what I was previously referring to from Neoplatonism, which sustains that the thought or the mind, intelligence of the individual is of such a nature that it shapes and causes things over there to morph into something else.
Yeah,
Very
that's
much like,
been proven in quantum physics. So, we're not just observing; we're actually influencing what we're seeing. Yeah.
well, the thing about, hang on a second, because the thing about collapsing of the wave and all of that is, which is a theory, is that the idea is that there's a limitless potentiality until consciousness, which is outside Schrödinger's equation, it's not included in there, causes something to coalesce into this that we can now relate to, but that's outside that. But it's a little different from what I do, because in a way it's almost the opposite, because when I'm looking inside the patient, I'm trying to swim inside their body, their field, but in a neutral way. My only intention is to find out what's wrong and try to help it to get better. So in a sense, it's the opposite of collapsing of the wave function. It's almost like opening up towards a greater set of possibilities out of which the collapse can kind of decollapse or can return to a healthy state of fluidity and possibility. I don't know if that's clear, but it's almost like the opposite of that whole quantum.
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you for explaining. So that aspect of it. Oh, by the way, you haven't actually given a name to what it is, what you call it, for the public to know.
Yeah. Okay. So when I first started, the way this started actually historically was I had a patient come to my office on Samuel Island, in the Pacific Northwest, and I treated her, and she told me, oh, my husband has had this really bad accident. He fell down the stairs, and he's all bruised up and everything. And can you give him some help when they were in Spokane? He said, sure, give me a call and let me see what we can do. And so this gentleman appears on the screen. It was a Zoom call, and he told me all these painful areas in his body that he had suffered, or he was suffering from, subsequent to falling down the stairs. So I was thinking, okay, he should probably have this, medicine to help prevent blood clots, and this to help relax the muscles and so on and so forth. And then I thought, well, I'll just take my gold antenna, which I use now, and used in the office near the patient. I was still working around the body of the patient locally then. I just pointed it, I said, where does it hurt? And I just pointed it at the screen. And then after about 3 seconds, he said, pain's gone. I said, well, okay, so where else does it hurt? Did it pain gone, pain gone, pain gone? And within 10 minutes, 95% of all of those acute injuries have gone. So then I thought, well, okay, so this is happening through the computer, through an internet connection. So I'm going to call this something. It's a vibrational phenomenon. I thought, well, Wi-Fi vibe is a fun name, a catchy name for it, because it's wireless and it's vibratory. But it had nothing to do with Wi-Fi, whatsoever. It doesn't, it's called that, but it's not reliant on Wi-Fi, nothing to do with Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned your gold antenna.
Yeah.
Can you explain to people what it is? And I don't know if you have it there with you, what it looks like.
I don't have it. Well, the thing is, before I developed all this, I trained in Chinese medicine, so I always hated acupuncture.
Yeah.
I can't stand it. The last time I had it was about 25 years ago. I hated it. So when I had patients, I didn't, in the beginning of my career, I didn't want to put needles in them. So I thought, what can I do? So I started to use, lights and LEDs, and they work better. And then I started to get interested in crystals and meteorite fragments. I had a whole collection of meteorite fragments, and I used those. And then I need to make this more precise, so I started to design and look for thin gold pins with different appendages with semi-precious or precious stones set up, like an axon with a neuron, almost like a metaphor for a nerve body in the brain with the axon in the body of the nerve cell. And now that's what I use, one white gold and one yellow gold, because I found that gold is by far the most optimal metal for healing. And so that now enables me to pick up all the information I need almost immediately from the patient through the screen without looking at them. It just tells me through a pulse that's coming into the tip of
that's really fascinating, because it kind of it resonates with what I know about the biomagnetics used by the doctor that founded that method in Mexico, and then also the colloidal gold and how that has been so successful at cleaning up nanoparticles in the body. So it's really fascinating that you were using also meteorite pieces. So what was your experience with that?
Well, because I was fascinated with meteorites, partly because they have a very precise molecular structure, and therefore like silicon, so they can function, like a chip. But because they have, there are different types of meteorite, olivine and others which have different combinations of metals. But because they've been traveling through space for a long time over vast distances, they have a track record, literally, of going, into areas of frequencies way outside the Earth. So they have certain, memory or resonance with them as well. So I was using those in the biofield of the patients, and it was quite effective. I always used obsidian back then to pull out negative energies, because there are lots of negative energies. That's going on the more spiritual side. And now I don't do that at all. All I need to do is the one gold antenna, and it's much, 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 much faster than ever before.
Wow. So how long do you think it kind of took you to sort of hone the entire process down to the gold?
How long did it take me to do that? Well, probably my whole life. Because I think as a child, even you're being exposed to things and you're subconsciously learning things. But in terms of the technical part with the gold and the specific reading and modification of the patient end, it's still advancing now. It's still accelerating in the effects and the accuracy and power of it. So what I like about this is that I don't need any equipment. I don't even need the screen anymore, though I use it. Most of the time I just close my eyes and just use my mind's eye. So like you asked me about what's going on with the world with COVID, it's like there's always more to learn and there's always more information for you to absorb. But the thing is you need to absorb that information, digest it, assimilate it, and build something within your system that is like a greater, a more evolved, more refined, more capable brain, if you like, that can therefore interact with something over there. And that's really, for me, very beautiful and exciting, because it's the opposite of something, that's an object, that's a mechanical thing or a piece of equipment. It's almost like a living, it's a living phenomenon. It's interaction with life. It's a living phenomenon. It's organic in that respect. And so I'm very happy because it enables me to get always better results for my patients than previously. Which I know I couldn't, the things I can do now, I couldn't do 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago. So it's sort of like, it must be good because it keeps improving. And that somehow tells me there's something going on here, which is, not beyond me, because I'm just tapping into something. And that thing I'm tapping into is really powerful and is really rewarding, and it's moving into kind of like a free energy, if you like, free energy phenomenon, but to do with a lot of things which go from physical to spiritual, the occult things to do with the nature of reality as it pertains to a human being or an animal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I remember a while back, I think you were commenting on an article, because I write about frequencies and resonance and vibrational medicine and frequency medicine, and you said something about frequencies and vibrations and resonance. Can you go back to that and remind me of the difference that you were stipulating?
Yeah, I mean, frequency is something related to metrics because it's the number of, oscillations or uh, crests and follows of a wave, say a Hertz measurement, which how many times does this happen per second? So it's fundamentally it's a way of measuring the effect of some energy in space or in time, and you can modulate that. Whereas to me, vibration is something much more fundamental, not measurable, relates more to what ultimately is called the one in Plotinus, in Platonism or other spiritual traditions, or what, the cosmic pulse of life, the title of Trevor James Constable's book, the phenomenology of pulse. Yeah, you can measure your pulse how many times per minute, you can count it, but the pulse itself is the fundamental. So there's something you can measure, and there's something else which is almost beyond measurement, which I call vibration or pulse or organ in its essential form, which is the life force. So I think frequency is, that's why I think Tesla talked about, he differentiated between energy, frequency, and vibration. He didn't just say one of those three, So I think that my experience is that you can accomplish a lot with the frequency, or, for example, with color frequency, with the right color, which is the same thing, or the right sound, which is the same thing. It's target specific to a certain receptor, if you like. But there's something else which is the complement to that, which is enabling system-wide resonance to be re-established. And system-wide resonance means, for example, all the trillions of cells in a human body somehow are in communication with one another and want to support one another. And if there's a problem in the circuit somewhere, then they start to fall out of sync and maybe even start fighting one another and create autoimmunity or inflammation or cancer or something. And you can't resolve that with a frequency. You resolve that fundamentally by resetting or recalibrating, like the harmony of the spheres. You reintroduce the fundamental pulse, or if you like, like the Ayurvedic Om fundamental.
It's like resetting the resonance back to what it naturally is in tune with the earth.
Well, I think, just to be clear, that I always have done that in my practice, because I've always been aware that there's two sides to this. There's a problem area that needs to be treated, and there's the person that needs to be treated. But also, the person is also more than they realize they are, because they're a soul, they're a spirit, they're part of everything. And so it's both local and visible and nameable and unnameable. That's the setting. So I've always been clear in my awareness that's what it is, not just in medicine, but in everything. And I've always worked in that way. It doesn't seem contradictory at all to me. So I think that within that combination, it enables, if I'm very aware, if this person has a problem in the right atrium or left ventricle or superior vena cava or lymphatic blockage or bile duct blockage or ulcer here or something here, and I'm recognizing that, and I'm in my understanding seeing that and feeling that, at the same time I'm also in a very neutral and unlimited way being present with and understanding that person's limitless nature and how that interweaves with the entirety. And it's that conjunction between the specificity and lack of specificity that enables the energy to do that thing that it does to heal the area or the person.
Okay, right. So how would you interpret the physical organs and the tissues responding to the remote vibrational input during your treatment?
Well, what happens is that many times the person immediately feels the area being treated. And how do they feel that? They either feel it through a pulse, or heat, or cool, or pressure, or something moving through. They have a sensory input from the area or the areas being treated. In other words, their brain is getting input from their body or from their.
I think what I meant was, what do you think's going on with the physical organs and tissues that are responding to the vibrational input?
Well, I think that they're obviously changing in the frequency, the frequency of the cells that are in distress is changing, or the functional system that's responsible for the health of those tissues or organs is changing, and that's causing, if you like, quantum state modifications, very, very, very tiny within the nexus of those molecules, and that then is translating to the patient as a felt sensation, right? So then, and that's because the mind, when it's directed in this way and can perceive in this way, it links immediately with the objects of perception, which then is reshaped, not through something as crude as intention, but by paying attention to something, having an intention, but paying attention, so that when the subject and the object are one, there's no gap, then there's no hiatus between the mind over here and the physical tissue over there.
That makes sense.
Right.
So, have you actually had success working with an emergency or acute case remotely? And if so, what makes remote energy medicine particularly useful in high stress or time-sensitive situations?
Yeah, well, I mean, the case I mentioned at the beginning with the gentleman who fell down the stairs, that was very acute. I mean, most of the time, I'm working with the chronic conditions or acute conditions, but they're not emergencies, except that, for example, recently this patient, her work involves, going on hikes with clients, and she had a very severe pain in her leg and hip, and it wasn't the hip; it was something to do with tendon, the flexor tendon that was inflamed, and so I could resolve that in a couple of treatments so she could go back to work. Sometimes people have an anaphylactic type of a reaction, so a wasp thing, or hives all over the place, or sometimes they have a big spike in blood sugar or blood pressure, and immediately we can resolve that. Not always, I have to say, sometimes people have to go to hospital. I don't mean to say just call me and no, but many things that don't require ER can be addressed expeditiously and very convenient, because the person's just at home and they contact me, and if I have the time, then I'm able to just treat them over Zoom, and then they're much better.
Well, do you
So
want to go into kind
yeah,
of what, just for the public and anyone
yeah.
listening who's interested in being treated by you, with what kind of types of illnesses and pain do you think you would be able to help them with?
Well, I mean, I don't really restrict myself to any particular thing. I mean, anything from carpal tunnel problem in the wrist to um, metastasized cancers. I treat very problematical conditions, and most of the times, people's conditions are related to things in their psyche, in their lives, and in their soul. So I tend to be more nowadays working like that with patients because I'm more interested in helping people with these existential and soul issues than simply fixing a simple medical problem. But that can be done usually. For example, I used to treat a lot of meniscus problems or sciatica or the neck, cervical realignments, chiropractic problems over Zoom, etc. But I do tend more towards deeply involving people with complex conditions, which are both psychosomatic, medical, and also
Oh,
soul
yeah.
journey.
That leads to the next question, how you listen intuitively to the deeper story behind the symptoms, because there's always some sort of psychological root, possibly, that's manifesting the illness.
Yeah, I mean, I think listening is probably the most important art for human beings, right? That's why the ear is connected in the Vedas with the ethers and the color blue with space. So when you listen to somebody, really, you're listening not just to the words they're saying, but you're listening to who they are. Animals do this too. They listen to who you are. So you can pick up information about the person if you listen with attention and with interest for that being. You're not listening to their story or such, but you're listening to who they are. And they know that because their energy, recognizes that and opens up and tries to help you excavate or take them out of that closed space. So it's, again, a symbiotic kind of a process where the person appreciates being listened to and comes forward. And then also there are energetic sounds during treatment, which are, amplified by the computer speaker, static electrical sounds, or knockings, or water moving down a plug, or rotating fans going, or scratching sounds. They have to do with energy inside their psyche or inside the cellular body that is expressing itself as an efflux of an issue during treatment. And sometimes people have a lot of those. And sometimes they're simple, clicking sounds, and sometimes they're more even on the occult side where there was some type of possession going on in the person. You can hear the shuffling of the feet in the room of furniture being moved around in some cases. So there's a whole spectrum, and there are many worlds, as you know, involved in people's complete being, and each and any of those can emit acoustics which have to do with what is going on with that person. So those are also diagnostic, diagnostic sounds, that non-verbal diagnostic sounds. And then what I was addressing before was, that the person as they are the experiences that they've had, and where, you know, the if you like, the mystery of the person as a person.
Okay, good. So what kind of feedback do you get from patients or about sensations after they have had the remote session?
Well, it's during and immediately after, or days after, depending. But again, they can be in terms of blood tests, in terms of improvements in blood parameters, or glucose, diabetic, blood sugar being 200 and then being immediately 125, or blood pressure, same thing, or swelling visibly going down. Sometimes a lipoma shrinking by half just after the treatment, or feelings of inward feelings too, like seeing light, usually people feel light much lighter, and also many times they'll see light, they'll feel themselves becoming made of light or something. So those types of things. Warmth, they often look completely different. The faces, the color changes, things which indicate objectively that the blood circulation has improved, the microcapillaries have opened, and that means that usually psychosomatically the brain or the mind is not at war with the body or afraid to be in the body, etc.
So are any of those signs, physiological signs, that you look for at the end of the session to just confirm, that the integration and the transmission has been integrated?
I mean, I know when I'm working on somebody, I can tell what's happening, but I don't say to the person, I wait, I tell them what did you experience at Corrin, and then tell me that. And often it's very, very exact. And sometimes it's not just in the body, but also in the energy field, or in the energy lines, as much as in the organs or the physical structures. And then we talk about what that means, So there's not just what that means for the patient in terms of self-understanding, in terms of prognosis, in terms of interpreting the reaction, not just objectively saying, "Oh, that happened." Sometimes people don't feel a lot, but they just feel better, and their pain goes down, or they feel very relaxed, and then they just feel a lot better. It depends what they're being treated for. Like I say, I mean, I don't really think in terms of a specific illness or condition. I really think in terms of the person, not the thing that they're suffering. And people have many things. Nowadays people have many things going on, not just one thing going on, as you know. So
yeah. I think this question is quite important today, especially because the level of this problem is just completely out of hand, and millions of people are experiencing this. And so I'm going to talk about targeted individuals here, and some say that they're experiencing their energetic interference as well as interruption of their physical body with the surveillance. How do you approach this specific type of patient with your work?
Majority of the patients I see now are experiencing those phenomena, because in one way or another, people are being targeted and are being parasitically interfered with And from my perspective, the phenomenon is not simply nanotechnological or 5-6G related, but has a occult or nefarious aspect to this very much so, which integrates with those vectors and those infrastructures, if you like, and therefore there's a struggle going on within the individual, just as there is within the collective, for the person not to be parasitically, not to have their life force extracted or warped, poisoned, or turned against them by something that they cannot see. So I used to find this occasionally before COVID in people when I worked in Seattle, for example, and now it's becoming so widespread that it's almost like every person. And but I have to say that on the plus side, that with this type of work that I do, I think there's I feel like a beneficent or angelic or like an antidote type of a force to the diabolical force that, when it's enabled in the person, which I think it's always there in each person as part of the gifts from the universe, when it's enabled, it's a cleaning system, and it tries to expunge that parasitical entity from the person. Okay, so this is my conclusion from what I've been observing in the world and empirically during treatment of people. But I do think it's incredibly complicated and widespread, and not always easy to remediate, because there are so many components to the problem, from the chemical to the quantum dots and the engineered living materials and the satellite emissions and all of that. But beyond all of that, I'm convinced there's something that is occult, that has to do with our spiritual essence, that is turning us against ourselves, and that has to be recognized and that has to be addressed. So it's a battle going on to the death in a way, and that's going on I see it going in people, frankly. Right. So I think people are trying to find a proper understanding of that, because they're so under pressure with everything from brain fog to cognitive dissonance to exhaustion to this, that, and the other. And they're not really being guided, and they're not really finding a way through this horrible labyrinth. And things just can, from one day to the next, something horrible can happen to a person. Unfortunately, I'm saying that one day to the next, something can happen out of the blue which shocks the person, which they didn't think possible, and they think, well, it must be, like the other day, I have a patient in America, and he, all of a sudden, he had this huge, it was a microwave burn on his reproductive area. He thought, do I have STD, or do I have how come I've got an intense suntan down there? And I realized, well, no, it's a radiation burn that many people are waking up with those. That's a targeted phenomenon, and why would it be that part of the body? Well, it has to do, again, you join the dots with all the sterilization, depopulation, all those sorts of phenomena. But that's just one case to illustrate like with all the horrible things going on with all the sex trafficking of the children, this is happening to people. So how to treat that in a medical, energetic way? I think you have to get to the source in the person that very deep is able to try to push that out, right? And in that case, that person did feel immediately like a pulse, immediately warm and cool in the area where the radiation burn just went down and cool, and then his eyes actually 3 times involuntarily squeezed open, like something squeezing out, like something you have to squeeze it out of a tube, and it just pushed it out of here. And then I haven't heard back since then, but that's an example I could see happening. That's something that I'm referring to that's not physical, can be excreted through a non-physical organ, you see. So I think the times we're living in, those types of conditions are becoming more prevalent. So if people need to be, I guess, educated into understanding that these types of things we're experiencing before, since COVID, aren't the way we were experiencing before COVID, and lots of stuff happening that is hard to explain. And people, not just me, people are looking to find, solutions for all of these horrible conditions that people are suffering from. Some of them are mild, as you know, and some of them are not mild at all, with a huge spread.
Yeah, it's a big topic, that one, and I don't want to say a single word about it, and we can just save the rest for another conversation, because I just feel like from my personal observations, as you said, it's there's so many layers to it, and I'm definitely in agreement that there's a very large spiritual factor, and for me, for example, like the nanoparticles that are showing up in people, which they're breathing in from geoengineering, and it's in the food, the water, everything, the soil, the plants. These are conduits of this negative vibrational force, and that in itself is something to bear in mind. Plus, as you said, I think there's this kind of, I would say, a very ancient disruptive anomaly in the human spiritual makeup that's also kind of being pulled up and made bigger in current times because of these frequencies are more prevalent, and it's a huge spiritual battle that we're going through. In my experience of all of that, I personally have very personal experience, as you know, and I prefer to just, when it's happening to me, focus on other things, because what I notice is if I focus on it, it makes it far worse. I'm amplifying it and I'm making it worse. So it's so much better if I just carry on and focus on other things, and that's how I deal with it. And I keep my frequencies high, and I just stay in the high vibrational energy mode. So I think that would be important if you could share like some of your tips for people who are targeted individuals, other than having treatment with you. What do you feel they could do to help protect themselves? I had a whole meeting with the TI organization, and they had some good tips. I'd love to hear what you would advise people do.
Yeah, well, I think first of all, I completely agree with what you just said, that you don't want to feed the beast. So if you respond to attack by becoming entangled, by obsessing about that, it strengthens it. So people across the board report that when they, like, you pull away from it, it diminishes. And so that's rule number one. Because, you know, these entities and these humans that are playing around like this, they get off on the attention that they're gleaning. If they're being ignored, they just sink into oblivion, and they basically shrink. So I think we have a certain degree of power within us to deactivate the effects of all this nanotech simply by refusing to play that game. Okay. The other thing I think people need to do is, my personal opinion is, you need to have a very, very clear understanding for you of what is right and what is wrong. If you're on the fence about values, you're going to have a very hard time resisting all of this. Because if you don't have a very clear sense of what is right and what is wrong, I don't mean that in a sort of conventional Sunday school way, I mean that in a deep way. You cannot align yourself with what is right in your book, which is you're not choosing to be part of what you believe in, what you believe has ultimate value. You're disconnected from that, right? So I think that is, those two are the most important. Ignoring, refusing to play that stupid game with those idiots and entities. Number two, be very clear, and also be very fiery and proud about defending what you value. It's not playing nice, it's about being fire, not just light. So you burn whatever comes too close to your fire and no right to be there. So I think that people need to have that kind of a tiger burning bright in the forest of the night, Blake's phrase, as part of the makeup. And that can only come by understanding this is good and this is evil, and I don't want any part of evil. And that I call Solomon's sword. That's always been my way. Solomon's sword is like, okay, this is, because truth is like a body, and if there's a wound, just a tiny wound here, that bacteria can come in, next thing you know, sepsis. So you're not 100% scrupulous about everything. Then there's a shadow aspect, there's a dirty part that can get contaminated. And most things going on in the world, the people are, they're showing one thing, but they're feeling or thinking another thing. And that's why we're in such a mess. So I think for the person to stay strong and healthy, they have to be transparent, clear, fiery, and decisive. And that will enable the energy from the universe that put them there to illuminate them and their bodies. And I think that's the most powerful thing in the world. So that's my tip. And however people can sustain that, they need to pull away from, obviously, toxic stuff. They need to find whatever around them in nature or within them can bring them to that place. It's not something that they can necessarily sustain all the time, but you have to try to. You have to try to have that as at your disposal, so to speak, accessible to you, so you immediately remember, this is who I am, this is what I belong to, and this is what I'm accountable to, and I don't agree with any of that. And then, the rest of it is, what can I take to clean me? What can I take, to detox me? What can I take to protect the energetic or chemical nano level? But on the internal level, I think there are only two things that are really, really important, and that's what they are.
Good advice. Thank you. So how do you stay grounded when you're holding a space for others' emotional and energetic processes?
I've always been a grounded person because, when I was little, I loved to clamber over rocks and barefoot and animals. I like the earth, I like animals. I never have a problem not being grounded, and I don't really hold space for anybody. When I'm working patient, I'm entering into a space to try to help them get better, right? I'm not really holding, I'm actively moving in there, I'm holding anything. So, and I don't ever feel their energy coming to me or lingering because I'm neutral. I don't have an emotional relationship whatsoever when I'm working with them in terms of, in terms of engaging emotionally with them or letting their emotion come into me. No, I'm just there to help them and to move there to where it needs to go to get the result.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really need to be centered at all. I mean, I think that the last thing I said, if you know who you are and what your values are, and you try to walk the talk, you don't need to center yourself or anything. It's just so straightforward. And so I think if people would do more of that, then they would feel centered. And when you feel centered, you feel grounded. And when you're grounded, obviously, you're discharging through the feet into the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I always do that with the patients because that's how the body, as you know, detoxes energetically. It's just unloading or offloading, and the earth reconstitutes that somehow. And so it's just not an issue for me to stay grounded with. It's just so much of being present and being in 100% focus, which is what I do. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Well, is there any kind of last words you want to give and contribute to the listeners here about healing and everything you've said today?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's the world is in a sense a very magical phenomenon, and I think my advice to people is don't limit yourself to what you think you know. That's a mistake. But at the same time, be careful about what you're picking up from other people or what you're seeing online, because to me, most of that's not healthy at all. So my advice to people is be simple and try to be clear. And if you have a problem, try to find the intuition within yourself. Where am I going to find the resolution for that? Not get more entangled in something because I'm not following some signal or voice inside myself to go in the direction I need to go, which is an animal instinct, right? That's an implant is a way that all living things have that. Insects have that through the antennae. Salmon have that through the flank, the special cells that can recognize the magnetic field of the earth at a tilt and find a back to the estuary and then smell their way back to the, so we have those, they're just sort of falling into disuse. My advice to people is take those, dust them down a little bit and don't second guess and don't go over there to subcontract out. Try to find some guidance within, and then according to what you can find, make a decision. And it doesn't have to be the ultimate decision, but you have to make one step at a time. I should first try to do this. That's my priority. You know, I can't solve everything, but I can try to solve the most pressing thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing.
Okay, perfect. So, Dr. Nicholas, is it okay if we share your Substack here, and how can people find you and message you if they want to contact you and make an appointment?
Yeah, I mean the Substack is a good way. You can read some of my articles on there, which is
Brilliant articles, very well written, very knowledgeable. Yes, I recommend everybody go there.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and yours absolutely. I think amazing, and yeah. So that gives there's a lot different topics, but it gives you a sense of where I'm coming from and how I see the world, and then you can reach me either through Substack or you can email me through my website, which is simply contact at nicholascorrin.com. That's my name.
That's your website, contact at, or email?
No. That's the email address used for new patients or people wanting to have a consult with me. Then they contact me or my office assistant through that email address, and that links with my website, which is nicholascorrin.com, and that's the email that people use to get in touch with me professionally. And so that's really the best way to,
okay,
if you need to reach out to me through
so I'll
that
put
email.
those details next to the podcast, so if you send those. And also your Substack is Dr. Nicholas Corrin, omd.substack.com. So if people want to read your articles, right? So
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
I'll put those links in the information next to the podcast. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Nicholas, for your time and for your great big heart and empathy for humanity in the world and what you're contributing to the healing of everybody today. And I hope that we can have further conversations in the future to kind of deepen, what we've touched on today. And yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, well, I mean, the ditto, a great big fat ditto to what you just said to me. And it's really, I mean, wonderful for me to have a connection with you and discover your work and everything that you've written and continue to such amazing, prolific material and beautifully written as well, because you're also very gifted writer and a wordsmith. Even though you may not like to hear that, but you have like me, I think writing for you, as for me, is therapeutic, and I think that it's the love of something, the love of the beauty, that's going back very briefly to the Renaissance. Love of beauty is something that has to do with understanding reality. The people need to rediscover beauty, real beauty, and how to find that appreciation within themselves. That's positive healing, So,
I was thinking about it the other day, actually, and what occurred to me with my own writing is that hypnotherapy has really helped me with my writing.
Yeah.
As a hypnotherapist, I've learned to be able to put people into states. And it was I think it was almost 15 years ago now. Gosh, yes, 15 years ago, I had that clinical hypnotherapy training in San Francisco. And that, I think for me, that's really what writing is. When you read a really good piece, it's put you into a state, it's put you into a trance, and there's healing in that, and there's a lot of power in that. And obviously we know that it's been used for nefarious means with the media and so on, but the benefits of being able to use words in that way, kind of, for me, go back to Milton Erickson, and he's a big inspiration. Anyway, but enough about me. Thank you so much, Dr. Nicholas, and we'll finish up there. And I'm excited that people get to hear about your work and what you do. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks again, and we'll talk again soon. I'm sure we will.
Right.
Yeah.
Sailing Beyond Knowledge Radio explores uncharted waters and embraces uncertainty to preserve and empower humanity. We are the seed planters and map makers, guiding the way into a new paradigm.